talking about, when I was just hearing you talk about glycation, and we're talking about metformin and rapamycin, which are used in the longevity space for anti-aging purposes. Where do you see now? Because I think this is a huge kind of topic now. It's the insulin resistance that we're dealing with worldwide, and now the advent of GLPs and how that actually can correlate to aging.
Yeah, absolutely. So those glucagon-like peptide 1s, those are, again, the biggest weight loss drug out there now. The semaglutide or the tirzepatide, those are the drug names with it. And we actually will have a study coming out probably in the very beginning of the year that looks at the change in epigenetic markers across the genome. But we also see that better metabolic control is absolutely something that is important. In our newest omic age algorithm, some of the highest weighted variables all are blood sugar and insulin sensitivity related.
So it could be, we can really truly call it a longevity medication as well.
Yeah. I've said that from the beginning.
You've said that for years.
GLP-1 are the most amazing biohack peptides that have ever been invented.
Yeah,
I said since the invention of penicillin.
Yeah, and you're so right. And another evidence for this is one of my favorite longevity trials was done at the University of Michigan. It's called the ITP trial. And basically what they did is they tested a lot of compounds for the ability to improve longevity in mice. And some of there were really 4 top compounds, but 2 of those top compounds were drugs that treated blood sugar. It was acarbose, and then secondarily that SGL2 inhibitors like the canagliflozin or the Jardiance is the brand name there. And so blood sugar is absolutely important as we age, and GLP-1s are very important there as well. And along with that, there are probably some other considerations or things we can discuss, particularly about muscle mass. So, but before we do that, I want to go into I would say some of the interventional trials, because my journey was that we were doing a lot of really innovative medications and treatments, but we wanted to see definitively how they were working to affect lifespan, and so that pushed me into this area of DNA methylation testing. But there's some really great clinical trials out there which have taken a baseline for biological age with methylation, used a treatment, and then looked at those outcomes, and those can point us in the right direction too. So one of my favorite ones to mention is a caloric restriction, because caloric restriction is probably the most well-validated way to increase health span and lifespan across multiple animal species, including humans, right? And so we know that this is defined as one of those interventions we already know works. And so how does it change DNA methylation? And what we saw is that it effectively reduced the Dunedin pace over the course of 1 year and 2 years. And definitively, actually, is the only epigenetic clock that was able to see that change. And also a reason why other epigenetic clocks, it's important to know your clock, because clocks that are trained to predict chronological age, what we call those first generation clocks, actually went up. Yeah, exactly.
Down.
Yeah, and so it was going in the wrong direction, whereas the newer clocks trained on more of a biological picture were able to show those reductions. And so caloric restriction definitively is one of those things. This was done on just basically 10% caloric restriction. So the calories your basal metabolic rate calories plus the number of activity calories you're burning per day, apply that times 0.9, and you can almost be certain to see reductions in your Dunedin pace of aging.
So that was one of the
good with your fasting.
The telomere length was Steve Horvath, one of his old clocks, and showed that if you fasted, it actually made you older, and that's where they realized it's not such a reliable clock. Right?
Yeah, exactly. And so there have been other instances of that too. We've talked about senescence in terms of telomere length, right? Those people call them those zombie cells that start secreting all of these inflammatory markers. And so people in mice, one of the other really good studies has been a combination of a cancer drug, dasatinib, and quercetin as a way to kill off those cells. And again, we showed a very similar thing, which is that those clocks trained to predict chronological age go up instead of down, which means that they're not giving us the right information, where those newer clocks, like the ones we talked about with you all, those are actually showing us that we can go have reductions or in senolytic treatment. And so it's important to have the right tool. And when we have the right tool, we can see a lot of new associations of treatment interventions. So another one that is going to be relatively popular here in the near future, coming out in January, is this second part of a Game Changers documentary on Netflix. And so this is a documentary that looked into the effects of vegan diets. And so with Stanford, we actually took 22 twin pairs. So the great thing about twins is that they have the exact same genes, right? So they're genetically identical, but we can put one on one treatment and one on the other, and then look at how those genes, we can basically control for the gene expression. So when we did that over the course of of just 8 weeks, we saw that the vegan or vegetarian diet had beneficial effects in biological aging compared to the omnivore diet. And people might say, hey, does that mean I should go vegan? Not necessarily. There were some problems with this trial. Particularly it was a younger group of individuals. And I think this brings up a conversation on the GLP-1s that people talk about a lot as well, which is, do I lose muscle mass? And how does that affect aging? Because one of the big surrogates for aging is frailty, right? We talked about your ability to move throughout the world, or muscle mass. And if you lose muscle mass, particularly at an older age, it might be negative for you in some of those things. And so I know that you all do combination therapies to help treat that. And I think that that's a really important thing to do. One of the other things that we always like to talk about is that one of our reports actually tests the ability to lose weight with caloric restriction. So if you cut calories, some people might lose a lot of weight, some people might not lose any at all. And we actually use this. People might think we use this.
Wait, this slide that you're talking about?
Yeah. So this is a sample of our report, which actually tells you if you're a full responder, meaning you'll lose a lot of weight, or a non-responder, meaning you'll lose almost no weight. And people might think that we use this as a way to tell people what to do to lose weight. And we do to some degree, but we also use it as a way to tell people should, particularly if they're elderly, if they might have some of that frailty and sarcopenia, that, reducing that muscle mass, if they should actually caloric restrict. Because some people, might lose a lot of weight and they can't afford to lose a lot of weight, especially muscle mass. And so, again, we can predict that with epigenetics, but it also goes into dual treatments, right? So if GLP-1s make you lose muscle mass,
put some testosterone with it.
Exactly, right?
Amino acids.
Yeah.
Build some muscle.
Exactly. And how to, again, handle this all, if you just looked at this, you might say, oh, I'm a full responder to caloric restriction, I should do caloric restriction. And that might be an overinterpretation, right? Because you need that bigger clinical picture. And I think that that's why, things like pairing GLP-1s and testosterone are probably a good thing. You're having metabolic control, but also making sure you're not having the side effects like frailty.
Yep.
All right, so listen, this was an amazing, complex discussion. I like day-to-day practical steps. And in the clinic now, we developed something new. We call it the 9 components of the wellness vortex. And that addresses all of the signs of cellular aging, and then we have our TIL system. So people want to know what can they do now to improve their biological clock. So I'm going to tell you those different areas, and you're going to tell me what's the quick action.
Perfect.
Right?
Yeah.
So number 1 in the component of wellness is nutrition. What can we do for nutrition to improve aging?
Yeah, generally, these are going to be things you're probably already recommending, but reduce processed foods, increase, the consumption of plants. Mediterranean diets in particular have been very well studied for aging and always perform well. So caloric restriction, maybe reducing total calories.
Reducing sugar.
Yeah, reducing that glycemic index and sugar. And then improving your, I would say, plant-based nutrients. There are certain plant-based nutrients like carotenoids, which we've found incredibly important and highly linked to the aging process.
Where do you find carotenoids?
Yeah. So in carrots, or most people know beta carotene as the thing your parents always told you to eat growing up. Beta carotenes are great, but also spinach and kale, some of those leafy green vegetables.
The omega-3s also that we don't tend to get. Nutrition to me is always the lowest hanging fruit of wellness.
Yes.
So as you said, decrease processed foods, more plant-based protein, also animal-based. We like this. Yeah. The right supplement, making sure your insulin resistance is at lowest, you have good insulin sensitivity, fasting.
Absolutely.
Right? Number 2, exercise. So tell me what you should do for exercise.
Which is interesting. That's why we called it movement, because a lot of people would be like, exercise is just pumping weights, but balance is a huge,
absolutely.
Look how much,
It's a huge thing.
Did you know about the Dr. Cara Fritz-Harold study where they grabbed a population of individuals between 50 and 72, they put them on a low anti-inflammatory diet, rich in phytochemical nutrients, with some form of probiotics, exercise, watch your sleep, watch your stress, and they were able to reduce within 16 weeks, I think it was, 3.72 years in just 4 months, 3.72 years just by making changes in all of those.
Simple diet, lifestyle.
So it's not just the fruit. When we talk about the lowest hanging fruit, I think for us is exercise, nutrition, sleep.
But remember, we're doing that wellness of vortex. We started with nutrition. We started a few things to do, right? Next thing, we'll go to movement. Movement, what we prioritize is flexibility, balance, on maintaining muscle mass, because grip strength was an important one, right?
Absolutely.
And also,
number 3.
with stress, hermetic stress, meaning some people are like, oh yeah, I've been going to the gym twice a day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's not necessarily a good thing.
Yeah.
The
Right?
balance.
Because it creates stress.
Number 3 on our component is sleep, right? How important we just said. Right, so we keep going up. So sleep, making sure, and same thing, wear something, measure your sleep.
Measure it, yeah.
We tell our patients that all day. If you don't track
Absolutely.
it, you can pick
Don't
up.
sleep next to your phone.
Sleep
that's-
fitness
And
is what we call
and
it.
I want to mention with all of those interventions you all have mentioned, there are studies on epigenetic biological age which back up all of those recommendations.
Right.
Every single one of those.
Right.
And multi-year age reductions, right? And again, if we put that in context, those 3 years, we're talking about age reduction that means a difference, especially if we all do it.
Big time. Big
So
time.
to keep going up that wellness vortex, next for us usually it's vascular health.
Yep.
Making sure your endothelium is healthy enough, right? With making sure you get enough nitric oxide in your diet, that your blood pressure is controlled, that you're not
Absolutely.
developing atherosclerosis at an early age. So vascular health is important. The number 5 would be gut health. We talked about the importance of microbiome, which I think with you, as he was saying, one of your markers was microbiome related.
And,
So
the,
finding
and the
ways-
brain-heart-gut connection, right?
Yeah.
The axis.
Absolutely.
It's huge.
And I couldn't agree more. And in terms of epigenetic aging, I think we have again good data on all of that. One data we're a little bit lacking is in the microbiome
Yes.
connection.
It's
And
complex.
so it's a
Well,
very
it's a new
complex-
one from the hallmarks of aging, the gut imbalance. Right?
Exactly, and as we know, it affects our neurotransmitters, all these other different things, and so probably less applicable that I would be able to speak about the microbiome, but I'm hoping to do multiple different studies on that in the near future. But we already have markers that can signal microbiome-related things that we already talked about.
So the next one was
The next one, then it's genomics, making sure that you check
Methylation.
SNPs that you have.
absolutely.
What's your
Methylation step.
MTHFR status, your COMT, your HFE for the iron overload, ApoE to see Alzheimer's dementia risk.
Yeah.
So knowing all of those things, right? The next one is hormones, knowing testosterone status,
Biochemical
insulin,
excellence.
biochemical excellence, thyroid status. But then we added those last 2 components that we didn't talk too much about that yet. Mindset and connection, right? Mindset is such an important thing. If you go through life with a victimhood mentality,
Or stressed
I'm pretty
out.
sure, or stressed out,
Or
the
stressed out.
psychological stress, and you can't cut down, that's going to have an effect.
Definitely.
And the last one, connection, not only to spirituality, but even connection to our community. When you look at the Blue Zones studies that they've done on this, it shows that community and having a sense of community was a big predictor of aging, of long life.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, no, so we see this as well, even things like marital status. So one of the surprising things that we saw on ours, our analysis of covariates related to biological aging, was actually even things like sexual frequency. And probably not because you're having cardiovascular activity or any of those things, but also like this intimacy connection is an important factor.
Let's say that to my wife. Now we get the come on, baby.
well, it's like that
You
saying,
need to live
happy
longer.
wife, happy life.
Yes.
It rings true.
Exactly. Well,
Rings
even
true.
just the amount of close friendships in many,
Yes.
many meta-analysis have been shown to be a longevity biomarker. So I certainly agree. And then, and so I think again, all those things you're mentioning are absolutely important. And you're really starting to prioritize it, and I think in quickest change, I think to the most complex, harder to treat things. But I think that is a fundamental pipeline that I would imagine would work very well for biological age treatment.
I love it, man. So,
this
listen,
was-
I think this was like so valuable. I actually got more than what I expected. So thank you.
And,
Thanks for having me.
it's a very complex subject, so I hope our viewers learn from this. I think what we try to do is try to very complex subject into more digestible terms and actionable steps that you can take.
Correct.
All those last things we just said.
And so
Well,
before
start making changes.
So just to make sure, because we're not going to have time to go over everything, a combination of what we spoke about, the 9 pieces to the vortex, but which included is peptides, which molecules to take, right? There's thousands of them. Like vitamin D showed another study, 16 weeks.
Another
Lowered
good one.
aging in 16 weeks by 1 point something years.
Yeah.
So which molecules to take, which that's what we kind of reverse engineer. Tier 4 for us is treating the gut, fixing the inflammatory response, the mindset, which doc is really big. Are we missing anything? In regards to combining it all to have that impact, so next time I test, I look like I'm 22.
Well, so I think the framework is in the right area. The thing with biological aging and just health in general is it can be affected by everything that you do. So psychology, it can go with diet, nutrition, your environmental exposures, your activity and lifestyle. Everything in your life has an effect on your body. And I think that the real big question is trying to figure out for you and your independent journey, what is driving that process? How do we make changes? And then how do we guide those changes and continually measure them so we're seeing better effects?
And I think also adhering to, because a lot of people, and I get this a lot from my patients that I coordinate, I'm the only person that they can really talk to about health. They don't really have anybody in their life that they can share this journey with. So I think that associating yourself with individuals that are on this journey as well, even if it's just us, it's like that old adage, tell me who you hang out with, I'll tell you who you are, right? So listen, I think it's been amazing, the information that you've given us today. Is there anything that you want to say to the viewers before, in closing?
Yeah, no, I think that hopefully everyone now knows the importance of testing your biological age or treating age as a primary outcome. I hope that that's clear. If there's one other thing I just want everyone to get excited about, the way that I get excited about is methylation as a diagnostic. This is going to be growing exponentially in these next few years. Out of all the things you talked about, there are methylation-specific diagnostics for each of those. We can, even quantify some of those environmental exposures, like the PFAS chemicals or some of those other things that are going out there. So I think people should be excited about this type of testing and all that it can do and how it can reduce costs to measure multiple things all in one marker. And so I think that the other thing I would just say to anyone watching is that, again, this is complex, right? We're talking about these really, things that are hard to understand. It's good to go with someone that has experience. I think that, the Medical Health Institute is absolutely one of those people.
Thank you.
Thank you, man.
Well, and to all of you watching, like I said, this is our lifestyle. We talk to guys like Ryan all the time. We're learning in this process. As you see, our test wasn't perfect. We're not perfect, but we're always striving. And our objective is always to treat you based on these 10 hallmarks of aging, touch all those things and be a support to you. And you know what? It doesn't have to be us, but make sure that if you are going to go on a health journey, that you find a place that is congruent with some of these things that we're trying to test, because we now actually have a test to do this, and you're not just going to be sold some product, take this and see if it works. You can actually now measure it. And what's that saying? If you don't measure it, what is it? Yeah. If you measure it, it changes?
Yeah, you can't manage what you can't measure.
You can't manage what you can't measure. So now you can actually measure and manage. So Ryan, thank you so much for your time today. To our viewers, we hope you continue to learn. If you were more interested in knowing about Ryan's work and his testing, give us a call. We'll point you in the right direction. Until then, we hope you stay healthy.
And God bless.